size of your success is measured by the strength of your desire. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Sports for Champions podcast. Today I'm joined by former Team GB and former Team England volleyball star Chris Gregory. How are you today, Chris?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm more than welcome. If we could, I'd like to start, how did you first get into beach volleyball?
How did I first start beach volleyball? I always say that beach volleyball chose me, actually. It was when I was at school. So I must have been about 18, 19. And when London won the bid to host the Olympics in 2012, they started a nationwide search for tall potential athletes in time for the Olympics. That was back in 2008. And it was called Sporting Giants, a talent ID program. So the criteria was to be 6'6" and above.
Right. And how tall are you?
I'm 6'10".
Right.
So I thought, I'd just sign up and give it a go. They were looking predominantly for rowers. It was the rowing, volleyball and handball were the three sports they were looking for tall athletes for. And that's where it started.
Were you always athletic?
I guess reasonably. I mean, I've always been tall. I think at that age I was at least 6'8", maybe 6'7". Always very thin, still sort of growing into my body. But I enjoy sports, I love sports. I played tennis mostly and love tennis. I wouldn't say I was the most gifted sports person at all back then, but enjoyed my sport for sure.
Did you play much in school at all?
I'd never played volleyball before. I'd barely even heard of it, and I didn't think that beach volleyball was a professional sport back then, which it was, but mostly tennis and school sports, yeah.
So it was quite an intensive selection process. Can you tell us a little bit about how that was and how they kind of whittled it down to who they were going to select?
It was very intense, and it was very scientific, I think. So it was run by UK Sports, and I think they had about 4,000 applicants for the guys. So they would shortlist you into trials for rowing, volleyball and handball, depending on your sporting background and your height and your weight and your dimensions. And I think having played tennis, they saw some similarities in terms of footwork and being a net sport and some of the movements. So they shortlisted you. And then there was like an initial trial. And then after that, they very quickly cut the numbers down. And over the course of a year, we had about 5 or 6 trials where the numbers got smaller until they'd selected who they wanted by the end.
See, wow. And then, so are you playing volleyball throughout this process, or is it sort of physical tests, that kind of thing?
In the beginning, I mean, I was still at school at this point, studying for sort of A-levels. In the beginning, there's quite a bit of time between trials. I wasn't really playing volleyball in between, just trying to kind of get into better shape and get into athletic shape. More sort of coordination and movement focused, seeing how quickly we could pick up the skill. That was a real key criteria, how quickly we could learn. And then it was a lot more volleyball towards the end in terms of the movements and being coached. So the closer it got towards the end, the more volleyball we played, but not so much in between trials, no.
See, and what would be the steepest learning curve as you're sort of adjusting to a new sport?
I think I learned quite a bit about myself through that process. That was probably the biggest thing for me in terms of self-belief and being competitive, and kind of my confidence grew quite a lot through the whole process. But it's a very technical sport and very hard to pick up for sure.
Are you a competitive person?
Generally, yes. Yeah, sometimes it can depend on what it is, but I think through that process, definitely, I was very competitive. Yeah.
And what sort of position did you kind of acclimatise to? Obviously, there's not. It's perhaps a more fluid game than maybe some other team sports, but did you have something that kind of singled you out for a role in the team?
I think back then, one thing that I really wanted to try and stand out for was the physical fitness and being in good shape. I had a lot of support from my school actually once I got into the process, and they helped me train in the gym and lift weights and get stronger. And I think to stand out amongst a group of people that are the same height as you is quite difficult. So I really wanted to try and get a bit of an edge on that side of things and focus on that quite a lot through the process, being physically fit and strong and eager to learn.
Makes sense. And then do you remember your sort of first competition? Did you go straight into Team England? How did it all work?
It was a pretty drastic change actually. So we were invited to join the GB development program at the University of Bath, which is fully funded by UK Sport, and it was like going from school to being a full-time athlete overnight. So it was a lot to adjust to, but it was an exciting time and an exciting process to be a part of, because you really felt that you're on a path, like a journey towards sort of a common goal. So we would train, start training at 6 a.m, lifting weights, getting in shape. That was a real focus for the four of us that went. We were all quite thin and quite skinny and needed to sort of bulk out and get a bit more physical. So it was a bit of a drastic change. Also adjusting to being a university student for the first time as well, alongside that. But it was an amazing experience and a process to be a part of.
Incredible. People probably don't realise how difficult it can be for some people to put on weight. Is that something that you struggled with, and what kind of things did you do to kind of get over it?
It really can be, especially with my kind of body type and being tall and thin. There's a lot of guys out there that can relate. But I think at that age, being sort of 18, 19, the training was so intense and so high volume that we were able to kind of put on some weight pretty quickly. And we had a lot of sports science and coaching behind us to kind of support us, putting on a bit of size and strength. So we did bulk out pretty quick through that time.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your best experiences playing beach volleyball at the professional level?
Yeah. And just going back to your original question about the first competition, we were fortunate to have the Under-21 World Championships in Brighton in 2009. So we very quickly ended up getting a first sort of GB cap on home soil, which was great, soon after joining the program, which was definitely a highlight and very inspiring to be involved in a World Tour event of kind of that level, and seeing the level of competition out there as well. But beyond that, the highlights, after partnering up with my sort of long-standing teammate, Jake, we went out on our own and sort of acquired some sponsors and went to the USA for our first big training camp for 3 months and had a great season that year. And then the pinnacle really being sort of the Commonwealth Games in 2018. It was the first time beach volleyball was in the Commonwealth Games, and being on the Gold Coast, it was special. We had, I think, a good 5,000-6,000 seater stadium with an amazing atmosphere in a great place, and that was a real highlight for us.
What an experience. You couldn't really have asked for a better location for a beach volleyball tournament, especially for the first time in the Commonwealth Games, I'd imagine anyway.
Exactly, yeah. No, you can't, for sure. That was it was a special Games, that one.
How does that work in terms of England? Obviously, we don't necessarily have the weather very often to train outdoors. Is there a difference between indoor and outdoor?
Oh, huge, yeah, massive. And yeah, it's true. We do not have the climate for it, unfortunately, but that meant that we really had to go away in the winter. We were also very much on our own as a team. There wasn't really too many people to train with here. So we went to the USA, to LA, where it's a real sort of mecca for beach volleyball. Lots of international teams, lots of top teams, and that really pushed our level, raised our level. Tough conditions with deep sand and wind and things like that. And we really try and get away and train as much as we could, but the big problem with that is being able to fund it somehow. So we had to work hard finding sponsors and partners to work with us, which we managed to do every year, fortunately, and just made the best of everything that we had and did the best that we could with what we had. But it was great to be out there and pushing for it,
How old were you at this point?
I think I paired up with my teammate Jake after the 2012 Olympics.
Right.
So from 2012 all the way through to sort of 2018 was the sort of peak of our career.
So you're obviously a fairly young man at this point, in your early 20s. How was the experience of moving away from home and spending so much time away from the UK?
I've actually been very used to being away from home.
Okay.
I grew up in Germany for a while, so we lived there when we were young, went to an international school, and then from pretty young went to boarding school, which I always loved and had a great time, and was always been used to being away, and I loved it. I loved the sort of travel and seeing the different parts of the world that came with it. And was very comfortable, so it was sort of second nature to me.
It's been an amazing run, an amazing career for you. Obviously, competed in some incredible places. I know that it's not always been smooth sailing, and you've dealt with multiple injuries throughout your career. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I believe actually you were told at one point that you'll probably never play again. Yeah,
there were definitely some stumbling blocks, which can be very normal, very very natural for anyone, and for any athlete. But I had a broken ankle, I think in 2016, which put me out for a few months, and a lot of rehab and recovery with that. But I think the worst injury I had was a dislocated elbow. I had like an accident in the gym, and they said that with the scar tissue, you won't be able to straighten your arm again, and therefore have the technique, the posture to pass a ball. So there was a lot of skepticism from the doctors whether I'd be able to play again, but I sort of didn't really take no for an answer, and did what I could to come back. Unfortunately, it was just about enough. It's not 100%, but I came back and played again. Not something that I've ever spoken about or like to talk about much, but probably the hardest thing was I lost my dad in 2015, just before competing for Team GB for the first time, and that was probably the hardest thing, not just in my career, but just in life in general. So there was injury, and there was family, and financial burden was really tough as well, being able to sustain it and seeing sort of a clear path ahead, day in, day out. But yeah, we still made it work.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that. It's so impressive that you came through it in the way you did. Is there anything in particular that motivated you back then?
I think just realising the opportunity that you have and the chance that you have to compete for your country and to do what you love and to pursue a goal and chase a goal, and having a common goal, not just for yourself but with your team as well. And I knew that I was lucky to have had that experience.
Yeah.
Whilst I was still in it, I wanted to make the best of the time that I had.
I think you certainly did that. So yeah, definitely take something from that. Can you talk? You've already touched on it a little bit, but can you talk about the role of funding and perhaps about how Sports for Champions can kind of meet that gap for young athletes?
It's such an important and such a big factor, being able to work with Sport for Champions and what Sport for Champions does for athletes, because myself as a prime example, we were non-funded for pretty much all of our playing career, except for towards the end in the lead up to the Commonwealth Games. And there's not many employers out there that are willing to offer you the flexibility and the time to train and to compete and to duck in and out, because you've got sporting commitments. So being able to do this work doesn't just fit with your professional career as an athlete, but it's also hugely rewarding, because you get to go into schools and engage with youngsters that are potentially future athletes themselves, but whether they are, whether they aren't, you're there to kind of inspire them and show them that they've got everything in front of them, and they can do anything that they want, that they put their minds to. And that's a really valuable and rewarding thing to be able to do. Definitely.
You spoke a little bit earlier about how volleyball almost chose you. We've heard about the selection process. I'm guessing that obviously you didn't have a natural talent for volleyball. You might have had different attributes that help you with it, but how would you see the roles of talent and hard work playing off against each other, particularly in your sport?
Yeah, this is like an important message that I try and convey, especially to youngsters. When I look back at school, I was not a talented sports person. I was not the most talented in my school by a margin. I didn't play first team sports. The thing that got me through the Sporting Giants process was the effort and the determination back then. And talent obviously helps. You need perhaps some level of ability, but the main criteria wasn't talent back then. It was height, and it was the commitment and the hard work that saw you to the next level and pushing on from there. So it's difficult to say, but there's a famous quote, isn't there, where
hard work beats talent.
Hard work beats talent, yeah. Where
talent doesn't
work hard, and it's said time and time again, but it's so true. Hard work is more important than talent, for sure.
Definitely. And what would a typical training regime look like back then?
Back then, there were some sessions we had at 6 a.m, circuits, fitness, lifting weights, when I was at university, it would be training in the morning, and then we'd get out onto the court afterwards and have an hour and a half, 2 hour session on the court as well, technique, and go to uni, attend lectures, and then we train in the afternoon. So always two sessions a day. If not two, it'd be one session a day. And then when it came to playing full time, it was 1 or 2 sessions a day, and anything that we could do in between was revolved around work or sponsors or booking flights, or but as standard it'd be 2, sometimes 3. But if it was 3, it'd be a light session. We'd also have sessions with a psychologist, also thinking about nutrition, video analysis, things like that as well.
How was your nutrition back then?
As a student, I think back then knowledge wasn't particularly good, and it was just all about volume, just getting enough calories to maintain weight and have enough energy. I needed a 4,000 calorie a day diet just to maintain weight, not to put it on. So it was quite a lot of food. Now I'm a nutritionist, so I've got 4 diplomas in nutrition. So a lot more knowledgeable and a lot more conscious of nutrition and health, and definitely have a better regime now.
So would you say you're actually better now in terms of what you're actually eating compared to back then?
Oh, massively.
Right.
Oh, you couldn't be more different. Yeah.
Do you still have the odd cheat meal? What would be a go-to?
Yes, I think, I do. I have to, now and again, just to stay sane. And sometimes I think it can be good for you, actually, just maybe once a month or so. And for me, if I'm training hard, getting the calories in, it can help.
It sounds like such a strict regime, and when you're not training, you're booking flights and chasing sponsorship. Would you say that the life of a professional athlete is tough compared to maybe some other careers?
Yes and no, but in different ways. When I look back on our time in the run-up to the Commonwealth Games, there's physical demand, there's mental demand, there's huge sort of mental strain and pressure, and the travel, it's a different routine, it's a different schedule, and that can take its toll on your body and your mind as well. That you're constantly under the microscope, analysing your performance and how you can make those marginal gains. So it's a different type of stress, but it's a different type of reward as well. Having now stopped competing full time, it has been difficult to adjust to a different way of life, and that's brought its own challenges and its own learning points. But they're both very different.
So when you've transitioned and you're sort of involved in different businesses and nutrition and things like that now, is that something that you were conscious of while you were competing, or did it finish competing and you're like, oh dear, I'm going to have to actually put something together here?
It's a great question, and I think it's a difficult thing for any athlete to go through after they retire, whether they have a plan or not, because it is an adjustment. I was always thinking about it, especially towards the end. What's next? And I hadn't quite figured it out, what I wanted to do, unfortunately, But that's okay. I went back to university, did a master's degree, learned more about business, and set up my own business, which I'm very excited about, and have fortunately managed to kind of keep a little bit of flexibility in my life, so I can still do the things that I enjoy. And now sort of being a part of Sport for Champions, which is a huge part of it too.
Brilliant. Did you have a favourite sporting hero growing up?
Actually, so Steve Redgrave was the ambassador for the Sporting Giants program, and meeting him was a good moment, and a pretty inspiring moment. But one athlete that's always stood out for me is Andy Murray. I'm a big Andy Murray fan. I think I've watched his documentary recently called Resurfacing, I can't remember. But I just think that what he went through as an athlete, and the resilience and the kind of the keep coming back mentality after losing so many Grand Slam finals and then winning one, I've got a lot of admiration for that. So I think he's a pretty great example of any athlete. I'm
a big fan, definitely agreed there. How do you think that being an athlete has made you a better person?
It definitely has. Working in a team, being part of a team, being part of a collective goal, working with different people across that time. But whilst you're in it, like I said, you're constantly under the microscope and having to self-analyse, and it makes you analyse yourself and the way you communicate, your kind of the way you act on court and off the court as well, like how you contribute as a team player and things like that. it's had a huge impact on me, and yeah, I'm very grateful for that side of it.
Do you think it's made you more resilient?
Yes. Yeah, it has, because being in a performance environment, in a performance sport, it naturally pushes you outside your comfort zone. And that's a really important place to be, because that's where you learn more about yourself, and that's where you get tested and get challenged, and how you respond is where the learning comes. So yeah, it has made me more resilient, and it's given me a lot of tools and things now that have enabled me to push on and try other things with a better mentality, I think.
That kind of brings us round to our last question. If you had any advice to a young person maybe that was looking to start a career in sport, or maybe even volleyball specifically, what advice would that be?
My advice to any youngster that has aspirations is that you don't know how much potential you truly have, and it's completely untapped and limitless. And this is what I learned from being a young athlete, that I did have the ability that I didn't believe that I had. And whatever it is that you want to do, it doesn't matter whether it's in sport or business or music or whatever your goals and aspirations are, you all have 100% have the ability. It's just a question of working for it. And end of the day, if you want it enough, then you can do it for sure. You can do anything.
That's great advice. And then just as a final addendum, if somebody was looking at beach volleyball and maybe wanted to get into it, is there something they should be working on, or is there any advice about the best channels to maybe look into getting started?
There's a number of places in the country that you can get involved in volleyball and beach volleyball. But the main hubs that I really know of are based sort of in the south where I'm from. If you want to play beach volleyball, Crystal Palace is one of the best places, if not the best place you can go to play beach volleyball in the UK, and Bournemouth. But yeah, if you're young and you've got aspirations, just start getting used to looking after yourself, like be healthy and look after your body, and get your head down and work for it, and then go from there.
Well, there's some great insights there. Thank you very much for joining us today.
No, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm more than welcome. And thank you to everyone who's joined us from home. And we'll see you next time for some more Sports for Champions fun. See ya. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, be sure to leave us a like and a subscribe, and check out all our other videos for some more great interviews and content. Bye.